David Stone was in the portal. Now he's back out of it and back at Oklahoma where this whole situation started. And, Tyler, I hate to say it, but this feels like the future of college football, especially when you make an unforced error like Oklahoma did. Of course, we had the Nico Iamaleava situation, had the video about that, where that was a situation where you force yourself out wanting to get more money. And here we had a bit of the opposite situation where you have a team taking the money away from a player. I don't understand why OU did this. Can you please try to help explain this to me?
Okay, so let's rewind to David Stone's commitment in the first place,
Yes.
a little over a year ago, right? When he was a big time prospect, he said multiple times, "Hey, NIL is not going to be a factor for me in terms of making his commitment."
Yeah.
Now, you fast forward a year later, he had a season where you saw him on the field, but maybe as a true freshman didn't have the insane impact you thought he might. I mean, this is a legit blue chip 5-star guy, one of the top 10 players in the country for his class. Those guys you typically hold to higher expectations, right? And that OU brings back a bunch of talent on that defensive line going into the spring. There's rumblings. All of a sudden, boom, he's in the portal. Right now, this all played out away from the public eye. It was kind of a shock, I think, to many to see him enter the portal, especially with a lot of the reporting going into the spring camp that, hey, he should see some increased reps and should be one of the guys on that D line. And you mentioned the state of college sports. And I have this conversation a lot with people, yourself included. I mean, we talk back and forth about it.
Yeah.
I think this is an issue, and everybody wants to point to the NIL as a problem. The NIL is not the problem, folks. It doesn't matter how much money these guys make. That is not the problem. The problem is, and this is the problem the NCAA should focus on fixing, is that while you have the NIL active, the problem that really sends things to overdrive is not paying the players. It's the fact that a team, let's say, for example, since the SEC obviously doesn't allow the in-conference transfers, let's say Oklahoma State goes to David Stone and says, "Hey, we want to throw $10 million at you if you enter the portal right now." Now you say, "Wait, tampering's illegal. That can't happen." Oh, it does, obviously.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it
it
happens all the
happens.
time. We talked
You hear
about it.
coaches groan about it all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. So it definitely happens, and it's very hard to stop. So you have situations like that. That's why these guys get into the portal in the first place half the time, as soon as they get promises of, "Oh, hey, if you come here, we'll give you this." And for a guy like David Stone, blue chip prospect, I could easily see in Ohio State. I'm not trying to blame anybody per se, but I could easily see in Ohio State, in Oregon or Michigan, somebody like that that knows they've got the pull, the cachet to say, "Hey, you enter the portal, we'll start you, we'll give you 5 million."
Yeah.
So it's not about the money for David Stone, but I mean, Cade, you're talking about a guy that's a legal adult, make his own decisions, and has immense talent. You're in that spot, and somebody offered me that. How do you turn that down? I
Exactly. And
mean,
I
for
think,
these guys, grass is always greener.
yeah, I mean, that's the predicament that I think a lot of people have had to come to terms with, especially in this spring portal cycle, that the college football we knew of, even 5 to 10 years ago is not the college football we have right now. There's a lot of the, I hate to say NFL problems that you have in it now where it's like, hey, if I can move here and do this, it's all about the money is what most people feel of it. But this is a situation where, you got to remember, and I think you put it perfectly, these are technically legal adults. But do you trust an 18-year-old, if, to have these talks about, loyalty to a program and all these other things that they haven't seen happen? They don't have the same life experience as you do most of the time. They are, going through high school, going through in a completely different world than where most of the fan base has been. These are not kids, and I hate saying this to use Oklahoma as an example. Oklahoma's last national championship was 2000. I didn't grow up in a world of where, you come to Oklahoma because of the legacy, because of the history, because of what Oklahoma puts out. Okay, that was 25 years ago. And that doesn't apply
Yeah.
for David Stone because, he was at Dell City. He was an Oklahoma City kid, went over to Florida to IMG, comes back to Oklahoma. And that's a great story. And that's one of those things that I think 5 to 10 years ago would have been a big story internationally. Hey, this is a hometown kid that's a 5-star guy. comes to play for OU, to add on to, you think of all the great defensive juggernauts that Oklahoma's had talent wise, you would have just, that would have been a normal start to end. But what makes me upset, and I don't know why this would happen, where you have the story that came out where OU's taking money away as like a pay cut of, hey, you're not playing as much. And I understand the thought process of it, but you don't do that to a guy with 5-star talent where you know that it's going to get better over time. You don't make an investment into something and then immediately pull it out. It's a long-term investment for a reason. You don't expect short-term
Yeah,
results out of a long-term gain.
right. And that's where programs like OU that have some of that tradition, that cachet, say, "Hey, we're a big time program." Where they're missing the mark to a degree is as you're laying out, they're expecting, okay, well, we're going to give you this money, this promise, and if you don't perform, we're going to pull it back. Like you mentioned, as a long term aspect to this, you have to show the kid that, hey, um, we're going to invest in you all the way, and it's going to be backed up by a plan. So if you don't have a solid plan for this kid, and you just expect him to walk in and if he doesn't hit the mark, sink or swim, that's not the game anymore. That
Yeah.
under Nick Saban at Alabama, that worked because they had no other option. He could stack up 5 and 4 star talent and say, okay, you either, sink or swim. And if, you don't like it, you go somewhere else and play, but you're not playing at Alabama. In today's age, that's why Saban got out. Because in today's age with the NIL and all that, that cannot be the case. You have to really commit to a player, especially of that caliber, who knows even if it's not something he's intending to do, all he's got to do is put out one, you know, eh, what I want to say, not necessarily flyer, but he's got to put out one word to an agent and say, hey, I'm looking at moving on, and boom, he's going to have 15 different options instantaneously.
Yeah.
So you have to approach it a different way if you're the pro.
Absolutely. And that's where I really kind of wanted to talk about it, was the two main points I had about that. That was one of the big ones I wanted to get to. Is I think this situation, what we've had really over the past 2 weeks, kind of perfectly highlights where college football is at nowadays. I think you had mentioned it. We've got to find a way to stop the portal stuff because the NIL's here to stay. There's no putting the genie
Yeah.
back in the bottle on that.
Well,
That's a
and
thing that's
look,
going to happen
the,
forever now.
these conferences, these schools, they could claim that, oh, well, yes, we make all this money, but we really don't. No, that's lies. The Big Ten made $1 billion as a conference. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, something
You're
crazy
telling
like
me
that.
that that's just barely enough to get by for your athletics department? There's no way. Now, the conferences you really feel bad for are conferences like the MAC, the Sun Belt, that no, they're not drowning in the money. They do well enough, but they can't afford to keep some stud play, you know. Um, but for these big conferences, there's no way that, you could pitch the whole, oh, what was us? We barely make enough money to keep things going. No, that's not flying. So the money's here to stay, like I said. It's where you fix the issue is the portal itself. You go back to the old way. Does anybody remember the old way? The old way was, hey, um, if you transfer, you better be a graduate. That's how you get to play immediately.
Yeah, or
Other than
otherwise
that,
you had to
you got
sit
to sit
out a
out a
year.
year.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not advocating for that. When the NCAA implemented the rule before then, this happened before the NIL, which has caused this problem. They had implemented a rule that basically said, hey, we'll give you a transfer waiver if you have a situation like your coach up and leaves or something like that. Now, the waiver itself is not the problem. The problem is how the NCAA applies it. They basically just give it for anything. So you need to go to a situation where you tell athletes, okay, you get a one time unrestricted transfer, right? Like you get to do it one time, no strings attached. After that, you only get the waiver if your coach moves on. No other reason needs to be given. Now, there I say that the only other reason I think you could really argue for would be something like, hey, you got this kid from North Carolina, or yeah, from North Carolina, he goes and plays at Texas. Well, his mom comes down with cancer or something,
Yeah.
and so he wants to get back close. That exception I could live with, other than the coach moving on. But they should be so far and few in between on those waivers.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think that's one of the big problems is you almost have this free agency in college football now.
Yeah,
I think
it's a
that's
2 prong.
basically
That's what
what it is.
creates the free agency.
Yeah, I
Yes,
agree.
is because you've got such an unrestricted transfer portal. If you clamp that down a bit, then you fix a lot of those issues. So then the Texas A&M can't go to, the Oregon kid and say, "Hey, we'll throw $5 million at you if you enter the portal," because then they're going to have to sit out a year. So if you go back to, hey, you get one time for free. After that, the waivers are going to be far and few in between, and then after that, you're sitting out unless you are a graduate. Like that's it.
Yeah,
That would achieve the NCAA stated mission of saying, "Hey, we're for the athlete in terms of bettering their education, right? Because they want to be student first and a student athlete. So you cure all those goals with that type of structure.
yeah, and then the other problem I want to get to, and this is a completely separate point, but kind of the same umbrella topic of college football nowadays. And I hate to be Mr. Tone policing with what I'm about to say, Tyler, but for the love of God, people, can we not just anytime a kid enters the portal, just jump to conclusions and just start speculating and bashing people that we have no idea why anything is going on? Because the amount of stuff I saw is, oh, well, we didn't want David Stone anyway. Don't lie to yourself. Don't do that. Don't. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want 5-star talent at Oklahoma. I don't. He didn't want to be here anyway. He didn't want to play for the jersey and play for the helmet and the legacy and the tradition. And that's why I brought that up earlier. We've got to get out of that mindset while we're in this current era of college football. This is happening everywhere. This isn't an OU specific problem. I don't want to make it sound like it's an Oklahoma only problem. This is happening everywhere. Where it's when we are now in the moment where you have the ability to go anywhere, the ability to play for anyone and get paid for it, that tradition doesn't matter to these kids. The money can matter more unless you start to put regulations down on this thing, unless you actually rein everything back in with the portal and with the you know, I've seen where the American Athletic Conference every once in a while has thought about the idea of a cap limit on NIL. I don't know if that would necessarily work. That's a whole other can of worms for a different time. But just something has to be done. And until then, I don't want to say be a good fan and only support the players, but my goodness, there are some people I think who need to just show up to game one and be happy to know that there's a team. I mean, there are some people I've seen, Tyler, that they just are so miserable. They are just so starved for something negative to happen so they can jump on the bit and just, hey, we need to fire Brent Venables tomorrow because David Stone left. What are we saying? It is the middle of April. Do you realize what that would do? I get that we're emotional people when it comes to sports. That's part of being a fan. That's completely understandable. But my goodness, just it is a ridiculous conversation I've had to see with so many people over this weekend where it's just, hey, we don't want David Stone anyway. He didn't want to be here. No person's bigger than the program. And then when everyone found out that OU was the one who pulled the money and that this was an Oklahoma unforced error, oh, we love David Stone. David Stone's great. Can we please have David Stone back now? Why did you do this, Oklahoma? Why would you hurt me and my favorite player, David Stone, who I want to see next year? Like, don't switch up and
Well,
do this.
no, and this goes to a bigger topic that we see. I mean, me and you being media guys, in the first place, we see this all the time. That's why we're doing the video a little later in the first place, to be honest with
Yes.
you, because we wanted the details to come out. Not to say that we ever, always wait. I mean, hey, we've done reactions, we get on there, but when it comes to newsworthy stuff, you want to make sure you got all the details. And I think that's a forgotten piece of it too, right? People want to instant react and they want to get that opinion out there. They want to fire off the hot take like you were talking about,
Yeah.
and get that complaint out there or whatever. And they forget that, hey, sometimes when something first breaks or hits, especially when it's a newsworthy situation, you're not going to have all the details. You're going to get the first bits of it, then the details follow. Not to bring politics into it, but we see it all the time now in modern day politics. It's been that way for the last decade, where it's, hey, here's the issue, react to it. Oh, and then here's the rest of the details
Exactly.
after everybody's already reacted to it, which is unfortunate. So, it's unfortunately a bigger reflection of where we're at as society. But sometimes, guys, it's okay to be patient. It's okay to say, okay, here's what's happened. Let's get to the real root of this. And look, we did the Nico video, as you mentioned at the top of this, saying just what, last week, right? And that was a different situation. He's the one that created that problem. Had David Stone done a similar deal and tried to, pull rank, then that would be on him, and it would be a completely different tone of the video. But sometimes when you let those fine details come out, I think that was part of it. People were having kind of, just had seen what happened with Nico, so they immediately jumped to that as well for David Stone, and it turned out to just be something completely different.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not like it's not like we have a perfect sports media either. I don't want to
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want to go along that side either and make this the media is always right type of thing. But it's just there were so many people I saw Friday night who were just panicked, just absolutely like, oh, this is it, we're done. Great. I didn't want him anyway. It's like we don't need to do that because I know people hate when I say this, but athletes see that stuff. They really
yeah.
do.
They're people.
They're
They're
people at the
human
end of
beings.
the they are people raised on social media. If they're seeing that happen, they go, hey, that's a big story. Why is he leaving? And you see people just bashing this kid for making a decision that, and we don't know what was going on his end either at that point. It's Friday night. This story's an hour old, and everyone's just like, oh, he's just a money chaser. If you see that, what makes you think you would be here if your fans are going to treat you like that?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't.
And,
I honestly wouldn't. If I knew
I
I was
mean,
coming into a place
a-
like that, that's a
and I'm
turnoff.
sorry, but chase the money, by the way, is a completely 100% American concept.
It
We're
really is.
taught from birth that, hey, go get what you're worth, right? So
Yeah,
that's the other thing that irks me about society. Why do we apply? If this guy was just at a regular job and he got a better offer to go somewhere else, people are like, hey, good for you, go make that money. But
exactly.
because it's sports, and it's a team we love, it's like, well, you're just a gold digger. And it's like that, no, because he would be applying what we teach people about America, that hey, you go have the dream, go chase as much as you're worth, do this and that, as
Yeah,
long as it's legal.
exactly. And
So
that's one of the things I always try to apply to people. Imagine if someone just showed up at your job one day and yelled at you because you were going to get a $30,000 raise if you went somewhere else. And they
yeah,
were just like, "You're not
be like,
loyal to
what
the
the hell?
company. How dare you betray all of us?" You'd be like, What drugs are you on? What are you talking about?" You would just be very confused. I mean, I hate saying it because we all fall into that at some point. We're not. No one is immune to quick reaction or quick burst or something like that. Where it's just, what are we doing here? At sports, it's going to happen. It's the nature of the thing. But it's something I've tried to become better at, and I've tried to help other people become better at, is let the story play out as it does. Because this was, at the end of the day, I don't want to say it was a nothing burger, because something did happen here and it exposed something going on in Oklahoma with the pay cut deal and all of that. That, like, hey, okay, don't do that again, please. Please don't do that ever again. Not with 5-star talent, especially. But at the end of the day, this was just a story of a kid who had to take a pay cut, didn't know why exactly, and then at the end of the day, put his name in the portal to look at other places because, like you said, you're taught to go after the most money you can. Did that. Oklahoma came back and countered. That was all that happened at the end of the day. And you know what? When OU takes on Illinois State, David Stone's still going to be there. If he makes a play, people are still going to cheer for him. Nothing fundamentally changed over this weekend, except a lot of people got really mad and then got really calm at the end of the day here. That was
Pretty
all that
much.
happened.
I
And
mean,
so that's why, you mentioned it and I mentioned it. This is why we are not always the first to be on a video and do an instant reaction, because you would have saw us probably be a little bit more heated Friday and then be like,
oh,
eh,
absolutely.
yeah, we would have been
I would
livid.
have been in the crowd of, hey, we don't need him anyways. If
I
he's not
know.
good enough to
See,
cut it, that's on him.
exactly. And
I
that's,
would have totally done that.
yeah. And, and that's the behavior that, like I said, we're all, we all fall into that trap at some point in time, but it's just, let's be optimistic while we can. We all went
Yeah.
through a horrible season last year full of despair and pain, and a lot of pain, and even more pain and agony. Let's not start the doomer talk of the sky is falling, we need to fire everyone again when we're in April, when nothing happened. Let's not, and this isn't me trying to be a sunshine pumper or anything like that. If something bad happens, you'll hear
No,
about
no.
it. You heard about it from me,
Just
Tyler talked.
let's save the anger.
Yeah.
until it happens for
Well,
legit
let's
stuff.
save the
They start
anger.
out 2-2
Yeah.
or something again.
Yeah. If OU gets shut out by Michigan, then we can be angry. But let's not be angry because of a 3-day situation in April. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's calm things down a bit. And I think everything, hopefully, will be fine this year. Hopefully. I say that with fingers crossed. I'll put the fingers crossed
Uh,
on camera so everyone can see fingers are crossed. Let's calm down. Let's try to have a good season. Still got 4 months until we play a game, man. This is going to be a long off season.
oh yeah, it is.
It always is. But folks, as always, if you made it this far here on YouTube, feel free to like the video. If you made it this far, I certainly hope you liked it. And then subscribe to the channel as well. Now at over 135 subscribers, I think we're at 136 too.
Yeah.
If you're watching this and you've subscribed
136.
already,
Thank you,
thank you. We do sincerely appreciate that. It does mean a lot to us if you subscribe. If you like, hit that little bell icon as well, the notification bell to always be notified when new videos come out. And leave a comment down below because I'm sure I probably made some of you mad talking about the fan base in there. I'd like to hear kind of your thoughts about the situation. They're probably a little bit different than mine at the end of the day on this. Maybe you agree with us on we need to fix the portal. Some people might want to fix the NIL situation and all that other stuff, but there's always a bunch of ways to do it. And then, of course, if you are listening to this on Spotify, we do have a Spotify. Feel free to give us a follow over there. Rate it 5 stars. We sincerely appreciate that as well. We'll be back with whatever college football news happens, as well as NBA stuff, because the Thunder are on a roll. They're murdering Memphis. That's a fun time.
Put the fries in the bag, Memphis.
There you go. I knew we were going to get that in the video. That's why I specifically threw that in there for you, Tyler. But folks, as always, until next time, have a good one, everybody.